I was recently looking to digitize some old VHS tapes and get some gameplay off of older consoles, so I picked up an Elgato HD video capture. This is one of the older ones that still has the analog inputs like S-Video, composite, and component. The problem is that it uses a non-standard connector, so it's not quite proprietary, but you can't really easily buy it on the market. When these were originally sold, they came with the cables, but it seems everybody in the universe lost theirs. So now the only way to get it is to either pay an exorbitant price to the two people that still have theirs, look online for uncredited, unreliable cables, or use those unreliable cables to make a good cable. So that's what we'll do. We'll make our own S-Video and audio cable. But first we need to know the Elgato's pinout. While doing some research, I found a blog called meanwhileblog.wordpress.com that had all of the information I could have asked for. So a big thank you to Mara Militia for writing out that blog post. The blog post has a diagram showing how it's connected on the Elgato itself, and from that we know exactly how we need to wire our cable. Based on their diagram, we know that the top left pin is the chroma or blue pin, the middle pin is the red or composite, and the right pin is the green or luma. And on the bottom row there's a ground pin, a right audio pin, a left audio pin, and another ground pin. If we look at the finished cable, it will be the mirror of that, with the green luma pin on the left and the blue chroma pin on the right. Everything is basically just reversed due to the way that it'll actually hook up. We'll keep that in mind when we solder the female S-Video connector later, but because this is a male 7-pin connector and we're soldering from the back, we'll use the same pinout with chroma on the left and luma on the right. Now that we know the pinout, we're just going to go on eBay and buy one of those shoddy cables. In this situation, the cheaper ones are probably just fine. The one I bought was around $4. When it arrived, I had tested it to see if it would work in the Elgato just out of box. I plugged it in and the Elgato didn't know what to do with it, so what I ended up doing was taking my multimeter and checking for continuity. It looks like the pinout is all over the place. It's nothing that can actually be usable in the Elgato, so it's a perfect candidate to actually take apart and cannibalize. So we'll take it and cut off the end and save these cables for later on. Next, we're going to carefully cut down the connector until we reach the pins underneath it. Then we'll clean up as much of the plastic casing in between the pins as we can so it's clean for soldering. After that, we'll bring out the soldering iron and actually heat these up to remove the old solder and wires so they're good to go. After that, we'll go back and get the cables that we had just chopped off. We're going to separate each one of them. We're going to strip off the ends of those cables, strip off the wires inside of them until we get to bare wire. Then we're going to tin those up. Then we'll put those to the side. We'll also take the yellow cable, but instead of using it as is, we're going to cut off the end of it and then cut it in half. That way we can use it for both the chroma and luminance pins of the S-Video connector. Unlike the 7-pin mini DIN, I was actually able to find these S-Video connectors on Mouser Electronics, so I bought a couple of them. So I'll take one of those out, I'll open it up and expose the pins that we'll actually be soldering to. Then I'm going to put it in a pair of vice grips so that it doesn't move while I'm soldering it. Because this is a female connector, the angle that we're looking at it from while soldering will actually be reversed. So while soldering this specific connector, luma will instead be on the left while chroma is on the right. So make a note of that. And make sure that the ground pins correspond to their chroma or luminance pins. Don't try to reach across the connector to the opposite ends, just go for the shortest route. Then we're going to close up the connector, first by crimping the cables together, then by closing the inner section with the outer section, creating a flat surface. I'm being sure to note which pin is which by putting a piece of tape on one side and marking it on the paper. We're going to put that to the side and then we're going to go back to the 7-pin connector and start soldering. Before soldering any of the data lines, make sure to apply heat shrink to them. And by data lines, I mean anything like the chroma value, the luma value, the audio cables, anything that's actually got data going through it. It's not a bad idea to apply heat shrink to the ground cables as well. Although in this video I didn't really worry about that. To be on the safe side, it's good to apply it to all the pins. And then for the rest of it, we just follow the diagram I've shown you before. If you've been paying attention, you may notice that the diagram I have written on the table has the left and right audio channels actually swapped. That's a mistake on my part, but the diagrams I've been flashing on screen in the video are actually correct. Now that all of the data pins are properly connected together, we'll combine the ground pins. We'll use the ground wires for both the chroma and right audio channels, combining them into the ground pin on the left side. We'll do the same thing with the ground wires from the luma and left audio channels, soldering them to the pin on the right side. That's about it for the S-Video cable. A component composite cable is made almost the exact same way. Just remove the S-Video connectors and replace them with RCA cables for the blue, red, and green on the top row. Make sure that the red composite cable is grounded to either the left or right grounding pins. It doesn't need to be both. In the background here, you can see me adding a bit of heat shrink to the end of the connector just to give it a bit more strength. But with that, I think we're good to go, so let's go over to the computer and try it out. Here at the computer, I plugged the Elgato into the VCR as well as the computer. I'm going to go into the settings here and change the video input to S-Video. Then I'll hit OK on this pop-up. Then I'll hit OK to exit the settings menu. In order to see anything on the screen, we need to start the VCR by putting in a tape. The main thing we'll be checking for here is that the connector is getting both the video signal as well as the audio signal from the left and right channels, and that both audio channels are relatively the same in terms of volume. The video here seems a little wide, so I'm going to go into the settings and toggle the stretch standard definition input to bring it back to the original 4:3 aspect ratio of VHS. Some devices like the Wii have a fake widescreen mode, and in those cases the checkbox can be useful. With that said, that's the whole tutorial. I tried to make everything in this video as accessible as I could. All you really need to get started is a soldering iron, some solder, and an x-acto knife. Everything else like the multimeter and the vice grip are nice to haves, but it can be done without it. If there's anything you guys need more clarification on, leave a comment and I'll try to help out as best I can. I read the comments and try to get back to as many as possible. Wrapping this up, I want to show you some recordings I've made using the Elgato and the two cables I assembled. The first one is going to be the S-Video and audio cable going from the VCR into the Elgato. The second one will be a component composite cable going from a Nintendo Wii into the Elgato. Enjoy!
One of the most memorable soundtracks in movie history is making history once again. Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the collector's edition soundtrack. John Williams' original score, available for the first time ever with 37 minutes of unreleased music. The Close Encounters of the Third Kind soundtrack album. Experience its power today.